The morning sun filters through my kitchen window, casting a golden glow over the familiar space that has always been the heart of our family. The rich scent of cinnamon and nutmeg mingles with the aroma of freshly baked bread, reminding me of countless hours spent here, creating a haven for my loved ones. It was in this kitchen where my son took his first steps, laughter spilling into every corner as he excitedly shared stories from school, his bright eyes filled with wonder. I can still feel his tiny hand gripping mine, how secure it felt as I guided him through life's labyrinth, teaching him the values of kindness and hard work. Every sacrifice I made was rooted in love, late nights balancing the budget, dreaming of brighter futures as I stretched our meager income, and simple meals filled with laughter, striking at the heart of every bustling evening we shared. But those memories are tinted by a veil of bittersweetness. I poured my dreams into him, putting aside my aspirations of travel and creativity for the sake of his success. The joy of his accomplishments has always outweighed my own faded ambitions. I wished for him to thrive, envisioning a life abundant with happiness. When he brought home his fiancée, a radiant whirlwind of charm, it felt like a celebration. I welcomed her with open arms, excited to embrace another daughter. I can still picture that first holiday together, the warmth of her laughter blending with ours, the way she effortlessly charmed everyone around her. I wanted to believe she belonged with us, that I could treat her as family. Yet, beneath her radiant exterior, warning signs lingered, sharp remarks that cut through the sweetness, subtle gestures dismissing my role. The judgments began softly, like ripples in still water, moments where she would take over my kitchen, changing my carefully curated spice rack and dictating how things should be done. I brushed off her comments, convincing myself I was merely being overdramatic. Yet the unsettling feeling nagged at the back of my mind. Still, I couldn't ignore that gap forming between my son and me. Each dismissal felt like a piece of my role slipping away. I yearned to bridge that distance but felt powerless against her assertive presence. A sense of vulnerability washed over me, as if my years of nurturing were being overshadowed by her charming yet controlling demeanor. As I wipe down the last dish, a sigh escapes me. This kitchen, once a sanctuary, now resembles a battleground. I grip the counter, seeking stability in the chaos, the tightening knot in my chest a familiar companion. My son still needs me, doesn't he? But is our bond strong enough to withstand the shifts that are drowning me in uncertainty? Despite the turmoil churning within, a flicker of hope begins to grow, a thought that maybe, just maybe, I can reclaim my place at the table. Determination stirs, urging me to unearth the remnants of my spirit glittering beneath the dust of neglect. Shall I proceed with Block 2? The first time I met my future daughter-in-law, it was at a family barbecue, the sun shining brightly, laughter filling the air as we gathered in the backyard. I remember how she danced into the scene, an effervescent presence that instantly drew everyone's attention. Her laughter was like music, infectious and bright, inviting everyone into her orbit. As I clutched a spatula, flipping burgers, I was enveloped by an unexplainable warmth, a hope that perhaps she would become a cherished member of our family. I did my best to engage, welcoming her with open arms and friendly smiles. But as the afternoon wore on, I began to notice the subtle shifts, the way she would arch an eyebrow or roll her eyes just slightly when I spoke. They were small gestures, but their sting lingered like bitter aftertaste. When she turned to my son, suggesting how I could improve my famous potato salad, my heart fluttered, partly with pride that he had found someone so confident, yet partly with discomfort. Who was she to override my long-standing recipe? The scent of grilled meat wafted through the air, mingling with the sweet smell of baked beans. Each cheer of delight from the children playing nearby was enriched with nostalgia, yet marked with a layer of unease that I couldn't shake. The laughter resonated around me, however, my own included chuckles felt strained. Everywhere I looked, she seemed to possess that innate ability to command attention, while I drifted to the sidelines. Over time, little moments turned into glaring flashes of contempt. Our holiday dinners transformed from moments of warmth into minefields where I tread lightly, wary of her sharp words veiled in sweetness. There were evenings spent in the living room, sipping tea together, framed by family photos of my son's upbringing, where she would slide in careless comments about my age, calling me adorably vintage with a smirk. It was as if she was trying to remind me that I was becoming obsolete. I could still hear the echoes of family history swaying in the background like an old song, but her notes became dissonant. That first Thanksgiving, I painstakingly prepared my signature dish, stuffing enveloped in rich broth, hoping to impress her. But her smirk returned. "So nice of you to join the culinary game," she quipped, laughter spilling from the table. I felt my cheeks burst with heat. It was as if her words sliced through the carefully crafted moments of motherhood, surely meant to uplift and create togetherness. Each meal became a silent battle, each gathering a performance I felt I was losing. I would often catch sight of my son between glazed moments, sharing whispered jokes with her, and I would wonder if he suspected the undercurrents of hurt swirling around the edges of my heart. At family birthdays, the way she drove the narrative, completely overshadowing my attempts to share stories from my son's childhood, left me feeling unseen and unheard. Even the way she cut the cake felt like a proclamation. She left me longing to be the one serving joy instead of merely watching from the fringes. I took to recording our gatherings in my mind, archiving every slight interaction as if documenting proof of my diminishing presence. My phone buzzed with texts from my sisters asking how things were going, and while I plastered on a smile to type back light-hearted reassurances, the weight of my reality crushed me further. I couldn't reveal the fractures forming within my family. That would be admitting defeat, a failure I wasn't prepared to entertain. As I sat on the edge of my bed late one night, replaying those moments, tears streamed down my cheeks like uninvited guests. My heart raced in anger, mingling with despair. How could I let this happen? When had I become so invisible? Questions plagued my mind, reciting the moments that felt tainted. The appreciative glances I once received from my son, now reduced to shadows of remembrance. The next morning, I stood at the kitchen counter, the sunlight illuminating my worry lines as I prepared breakfast. I could hear my son and his wife greeting one another in the living room, a banal exchange that washed over me, devoid of the warmth I once cherished. The sensation was familiar, as if I were becoming a ghost in my own home, moving through memories without a trace. In that moment, I vowed to find another way back into the life I once fostered. I recalled that flicker of determination buried within me. Perhaps if I made my presence known more deliberately, infused some life back into my dreams, I could awaken from this nightmare. My heart thudded in rhythm, my resolve hardening like concrete, as I decided that I must reclaim the narratives trodden underfoot. It would be a journey of reclamation, a long climb out of this emotional pit. But I felt the fire flicker beneath the ashes, and it whispered a promise. I wouldn't go down without a fight. Shall I move on to block 3? In the days that followed, I awoke each morning with renewed purpose, the soft light of dawn no longer feeling like an omen of the inevitable shame I faced. but as a canvas inviting me to paint my own story. I stood before the kitchen mirror, taking a moment to study myself. I could still see the woman who created a home filled with love, who nurtured and cared. However, that spirit felt buried under layers of doubt and resentment, and now it was time to peel them away. I began methodically setting boundaries in my mind, sketching them out with clarity. It was as if I were layering walls around my heart that would protect it but allow my voice to be heard. First and foremost, I knew I had to reclaim my role within our family gatherings, to shift the narrative from mere spectator to vibrant participant. I resolved to bring more joy into our lives through my cooking, my stories, and my genuine laughter. The next Sunday, I decided to host a family dinner, reimagining the traditional gathering into an event worthy of celebration. As I stood in the kitchen, rolling out fresh pasta while the smell of simmering tomato sauce filled the air, I felt excitement bubbling inside me. I carefully selected recipes that held special meaning, the spaghetti bolognese I had made for family birthdays, a burst of flavors steeped in nostalgia. Every ingredient represented a story, a memory wrapped in love. Throughout the day, however, my anxiety fluttered like a caged bird. I couldn't help but worry about how my daughter-in-law would react. What if she dismissed my efforts again? What if she stole my kitchen thunder by bringing her own dishes or critiquing mine? Maintaining my composure amidst these questions became paramount. I had to remind myself of my mantra: they can mute me at the table, never in my heart. Repeating it became my shield. As I laid the table, filling it with vibrant dishes and lighting candles that flickered like stars, I was determined to create an atmosphere where everyone would feel welcomed and cherished. The soft clink of cutlery against porcelain resonated through the room like a melody, soothing me, invigorating my resolve. When my son and his wife arrived, I greeted them with smiles, masking the storm brewing deep within. As they entered, I caught a glimpse of her expression, a mixture of surprise and mild skepticism. "Wow, you really went all out," she offered, a comment that could easily be read as genuine praise or veiled sarcasm. I swallowed hard, reminding myself to stay grounded, to not react overly defensively. My son, however, was oblivious to the tension. He admired the spread and plopped down at the head of the table with an appreciation that warmed my heart. "This looks incredible, Mom," he exclaimed, and I felt that familiar surge of joy rise within me, even as I sensed his wife's discontent bubbling just beneath the surface. We gathered around the table, laughter intertwined with stories, but as the dinner unfolded, the air grew thick with unspoken words. I could feel my daughter-in-law's eyes on me, a hawk waiting to swoop down at the slightest sign of weakness. Yet, I persisted, telling tales from my son's childhood, embellishing the mundane moments that brought us together, my heart racing as I noticed her lips twitch in irritation. "Did you really think serving Italian was a good idea?" she interjected without prompt as I shared a fond memory. The air turned electric. My heart sank, but I refused to let fear dictate my response. Instead, I straightened my posture, willing my body to steady itself, and gently smiled. "It's our family tradition. I hope you join in the fun," I replied, my voice calm, firm enough that it caught her off guard. Dinner continued. Tension rippled beneath the surface, but I stayed the course, gracefully navigating the conversation. I leaned into anecdotes filled with laughter, recalling shared moments that brought us closer together, re-establishing connections that felt tethered by time. Occasionally, when her comments turned cutting, I met them with cheerful anecdotes or light-hearted comebacks, a skill I honed over many years of parenting. In the hours that followed, I felt a subtle shift in the dynamics. My son occasionally chimed in, catching onto my energy, reaffirming my presence. The smiles I once yearned for flickered back to life. Their laughter echoed in the air, and slowly but surely, my daughter-in-law's dismissive comments turned into faint whispers of encouragement. Maybe she felt the undertow shifting beneath her as I fought to reclaim my space. That night, when everyone had returned home, I basked in the afterglow alone in my kitchen. The remnants of our dinner still scattered across the table reminded me of the victory I had fought for, not just for myself but for my son, for the family I loved fiercely. I reminded myself of my mantra. I would no longer be silenced in my own home. I vowed silently as I washed the dishes. I would continue to carve out my place in this ever-shifting landscape. I decided it was time to dig deeper. I would investigate the origins of the tension, the roots of the animosity, and find a way to navigate it. Identify my daughter-in-law's own fears that perhaps fueled her behavior. This was just the beginning. I had a plan, and I would follow through. Shall I proceed with Block 4? The days following that memorable dinner pushed me to the edge of hope and trepidation, a delicate balance where every mindful thought seemed to carry the weight of my past encounters. I felt as if I were perched on a tightrope, teetering between the resolve to reclaim my dignity and fears of falling back into the dark abyss of humiliation. My mantra echoed in my mind like a distant drum, reminding me that silence would not rule my heart. In the coming weeks, I focused on subtly investigating my daughter-in-law's behavior and motivations, determined to find out what lay beneath her unwavering facade. I studied her more closely, seeking the subtle cues hidden in her actions and words. The interactions in my home transformed into a critical lens through which I could navigate the haze of discontent. Little things spoke volumes. A sneer when I mentioned a recipe she deemed outdated, or the way she scoffed at my stories, dismissing my experiences as relics of a bygone era. Yet, my priority was to tread carefully. I wanted to understand the woman shaping my family dynamics without provoking a defensive reaction. So I shifted my focus to warmer moments, conversations that seemed casual, almost innocent. I invited her to join me at the local farmers market, a place that brimmed with vibrant produce and warm smiles. On our first visit, the air crackled with potential. I could hear the soft chatter of vendors, the slight rustle of fresh greens, and the sweet scent of homemade preserves. As we strolled through the aisles, I made it a point to engage her in light banter about recipes and her favorite dishes. I offered tidbits of information from my past, how my mother taught me to cook with love, or how every ingredient held a story. To my surprise, my daughter-in-law began to open up, her walls slightly softening. "You know, my mom was a great cook too. I miss her lasagna," she replied. The undertone of nostalgia in her voice gave me pause. Perhaps there was more to her aggression than mere disdain. In that softer moment, I could sense vulnerability simmering beneath her skin. I determined to peel away the layers to reveal the truth behind her antagonism. As we meandered through the market, I switched gears, gently probing deeper with careful phrases. "What do you like to cook?" I asked, my hands swirling through a basket of fresh basil. She hesitated, then shared. "I tried to. Mostly experimental stuff. I think I'm still searching for a style." There was a hint of uncertainty in her voice that caught my attention. "Mastering new dishes always feels like a battle," she confessed with a nervous laugh. I seized that opportunity, leaning into her uncertainty. "Cooking can be like art, doesn't it? Merging flavors to create something beautiful. But it always takes practice." Her gaze flickered toward the fresh ingredients, and I saw a glimmer of excitement. We continued to chat, and with each exchange, I noticed more of her story unfurling. She shared her worries about living up to the standards of her mother-in-law and her struggle to carve her place in our family. Maybe I wasn't the only one facing a steep mountain. She too was unsure of her footing. We left the market with a basket full of bright produce and a tentative friendship blossom. Those moments felt like stepping stones, gradually paving the way for deeper discussions in subsequent weeks. I invited her over more often, and as we cooked together, she began to lower her defenses. With each simmering pot, each slice of onion, the layers of hostility peeled back, unveiling fragments of a shared understanding. But uncertainty danced in the periphery of my resolve. As our connection deepened, I entertained fleeting doubts about how far I could push this newfound rapport. Was I merely digging deeper into her psyche to forge a shield, or was I truly creating a place of belonging? As I probed further, I began to piece together the scraps of her story, one riddled with complexities and emotional scars from her past. Through shared laughter and occasional silent moments filled with the sounds of sizzling pans, I learned about her own difficult upbringing. The more we cooked, the more I understood her need to impress. Like me, she craved validation. Yet, within this budding bond, the tension also returned. She would occasionally slip back into her biting remarks, disguised as well-meaning suggestions. At one gathering, as I presented a simple lemon tart, she quipped, "A little too sweet, don't you think? Don't you have something more complex?" I felt a stab of frustration rise within me, but I forced myself to breathe, allowing the warmth of my panic to fade. "It's all about balance," I replied steadily, striving to keep calm. Navigating these moments became my challenge. With every interaction, I saw further evidence of her insecurities and fears. They were tangled with the intimidation she felt from my years of experience and my son's affection for me. I decided it was time to address these simmering tensions head-on. Underneath it all, she simply wished to be acknowledged and accepted, a sentiment I could relate to all too well. As our relationship deepened, I started to envision a future where I could not only forge a bond with her, but also lay the groundwork for a new family dynamic, one built on respect and understanding rather than conflict. I rehearsed the words I would choose, carefully crafting my approach to encourage direct dialogue. I longed to confront the barriers that still lay between us, squarely face the fears she harbored, and ultimately illuminate her path just as I wished someone would illuminate mine. Still, fear held me at bay. What if the delicate balance we had begun to create shattered? Was I prepared for the possibility that the confrontation would send us spiraling into tension once more? Yet, deep down, I knew that I couldn't remain on the sidelines any longer. I had glimpsed the possibility of an alliance with her, and it was far too precious to disregard. With my heart thrumming with purpose, I resolved to plan a crucial conversation, one that would bring us together more than ever before. The days passed in a blur as I mentally prepared for the pivotal conversation that lurked on the horizon. I felt the undercurrents of change stirring within me and around me to confront the deep-seated misunderstanding my daughter-in-law and I had nurtured instead of demolishing. It was necessary to confront the unspoken walls built from fear and pride. Like building a bridge between two islands, I knew this would take effort, understanding, and vulnerability. With each passing interaction at home, I could see her struggles more clearly. One evening, as we cooked together, she scoffed at my reference to good old-fashioned family values, rolling her eyes as I referenced my own upbringing. "Things have changed," she snapped. "You can't treat family like they did in your day." I felt a tightness creeping into my chest. Her words, while harsh, revealed a battle within her, a conflict between honoring the past and grappling with her own identity in a modern family. It dawned on me that she had been battling more than I had realized. Over the next few days, I mulled over the idea of an intimate, heart-to-heart conversation. I considered various ways to introduce the topic, wanting to approach it like a gentle unfolding of a treasured gift rather than a confrontational storm. On a crisp Saturday morning, I decided to invite her out for a leisurely walk around the neighborhood. It was an inviting, sunny day, a perfect backdrop for reflection. As we strolled along tree-lined streets, I allowed the comforting sounds of chirping birds and the rustling leaves immerse us. With each step, I felt the anticipation mount within me. It was now or never. I took a deep breath, hoping to steady my nerves. "Can we talk?" I finally said, my voice soft yet steady enough to indicate the significance of the moment. Her eyes flickered with a mix of curiosity and hesitation. "Talk about what?" she asked, eyebrow raised like she prepared for potential conflict. "About us, our family," I replied, feeling the knot in my stomach tighten. "I sensed tension between you and me, and even within the family unit we are forming. I truly want to understand what lies behind it." A moment of silence hung in the air, the fluttering leaves around us whispering their secrets. I could see the internal battle playing out across her face. She was torn, but I could sense a glimpse of vulnerability peeking through her defenses. "I don't know, honestly," she finally admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I feel like I'm always expected to measure up, to please everyone, especially your son. He loves you so much, and sometimes it feels like I come second." My heart constricted as I listened, a phantom pain echoing within me. The realization that her disdain sometimes masked insecurity, a fear of not being enough. We had both been battling the same emotional war, except I had placed my armor aside, and she had been fortified with a facade that concealed her tenderness. "Your place is important to this family, just as mine is. We are different, but that doesn't diminish your role," I replied gently. "There's no need to compete for love. You have a right to your space here, just as I do." The weight of my words seemed to ground her as she turned to face me more fully. "But it feels like you're always watching me, judging me. Anytime I see you, it's like I have to prove something," she confessed, her voice wavering. "I'm sorry if I come off as harsh. You're scared." "I recognize that fear," I interjected, myself surprised by the wisdom that came forward. "It's okay to feel that way. We all do, especially when we want to be part of something special." I watched as the wall she had built began to crack. It was a pivotal moment, opening the door for deeper sharing. It was as if we had stepped outside the boundaries dictated by roles and titles, allowing authentic discourse to breathe. I could feel the burgeoning connection settling into place, a bridge woven from understanding. "You don't know how hard it is for me to feel good enough. Everyone always talks about how great you are, and how wonderful your meals are, and how you raised your son so well." There was an edge of anguish in her voice, a plea for validation that echoed my own struggles. I reached out, surprising both of us by placing my hand reassuringly on her arm. "You're not just a daughter-in-law to me. You're a person with your own strengths, challenges, and dreams." It felt bold to say those words aloud, an affirmation I hadn't realized I needed to make. The honesty began to weave a new tapestry of relationship and respect. "I'd love to know your stories, your journey," I offered, assisting her in breaking down the barriers that had kept us apart. "We can learn from each other." As we continued our walk, tears shimmered in the corners of her eyes, and she finally began to share snippets of her journey. Her upbringing, her parents' expectations, her aspirations that felt continually out of reach. Each word unveiled the layers of conflict and insecurity, laying bare emotions tethered to moments where she had felt invisible, just like I had. The sun dipped lower on the horizon as she spoke, painting the evening sky with orange and pink hues. The colors reminded me of the warmth that came from vulnerability rather than division. Knitting our stories together illuminated the shadows within us. I've always thought you disapprove of my choices, the way I approach cooking, or that I choose modern methods, she continued, spilling secrets I never thought she held. Cooking isn't a competition, I smiled, allowing an ounce of levity to slip through. It's about finding joy and expressing flavor. I want to learn from you just as much. In that moment, I felt our connection solidify, a fragile yet resilient bond forming in the twilight of understanding. The emotional tumult between us began to evaporate, replaced by tentative camaraderie and shared aspirations. I think I can begin to see that, she replied softly, tracing a breath that carried relief. The conversation wove itself into the fabric of our new familial dynamics. This exchange was pivotal. It became the foundation on which I would build trust, acceptance, and mutual respect. As I leaned back on our shared experience, my heart swelled with hope. I was ready to let go of the past misunderstandings, allowing myself to move forward with purpose, standing by my mantra that they could mute me at the table, but never in my heart. With her walls crumbling, I could see the doorway to a blossoming partnership opening wide. Shall I proceed with Block 6? With the barriers between my daughter-in-law and me beginning to disintegrate, I felt a flicker of possibility igniting within our family dynamics. The previous conversation we shared had opened the door to change, and now it was time to convert that understanding into action. I envisioned creating an environment where both of us could thrive, fostering a sense of cooperation instead of conflict. The idea for a family gathering took shape, an outdoor barbecue that would bring together not just my son and daughter-in-law, but also close friends and family. This occasion would serve as a celebration of unity, a chance for us to showcase our growing bond and explore the joys of shared experiences. I imagined soft music playing in the background, the smell of sizzling meats dancing in the air, and laughter mingling freely with heartfelt conversation. On the morning of the barbecue, I rose early, eager to prepare. The delicate aroma of marinated meats filled my kitchen, igniting an infectious excitement within me. I arranged a picturesque picnic area in my backyard, embellished with bright tablecloths and vibrant flowers. Each decorative detail was a reflection of my investment in this gathering, designed to foster a warm and inviting atmosphere. Feeling buoyed by the prospect of collaboration, I reached out to my daughter-in-law, inviting her to co-create the menu. "What's one dish that we could make together?" I asked, hoping this would solidify our partnership further. To my delight, she responded enthusiastically, suggesting a colorful Mediterranean salad adorned with an array of vibrant vegetables. Her excitement was palpable, igniting an enthusiasm within me. "Let's add roasted chickpeas for crunch," I suggested, and she nodded eagerly. Working side by side in the kitchen felt liberating, as if we were laying the groundwork of a relationship built on collaboration. As the day approached, I experienced a roller coaster of emotions, anticipation mixed with the old fears that still flickered within. Would the comfort we had established survive the scrutiny of family gatherings? With every light-hearted moment we shared in the kitchen, I felt the shadows of my past insecurities creeping back in. I took deep breaths, repeating my mantra, "They can mute me at the table, never in my heart." My resolve strengthened as the day drew nearer. Finally, the barbecue day arrived. I stood at the grill, the excitement from earlier days swirling around me like the smoke rising from the sizzling meat. Friends and family began to trickle in, the atmosphere instantly reaching a harmonious blend of joy and comfort. My son welcomed guests with delight, easing my nerves as my daughter-in-law walked through the door. Her smile felt genuine, brighter than I remembered. As we prepared together, the bond between us only continued to grow. We sliced vegetables, our laughter echoing in harmony, breathing life into what had previously been a contentious space. I watched her deftly handle a knife, impressed by her skills. This collaboration felt nothing short of a miracle, a symbol of our commitment to forge a healthier relationship. A flicker of humor sparked in the air when we both caught sight of our dessert, a peach cobbler glistening in the iridescent light. Almost involuntarily, she quipped, "Can you ever make something that isn't overly sweet?" A part of me braced for the potential sting, but another part felt a warmth I hadn't anticipated. I smiled back, filled with newfound confidence. "It's all about balance, just like our relationships," I replied, proud of my calm response. It was a moment that felt pivotal, a denouncement of old habits in favor of connection. As our table began to fill with shared creations, I couldn't shake the feeling rising in my chest. This gathering was about more than just food. It had transformed into a festival of stories, laughter, and connection. My daughter-in-law and I exchanged proud glances. We were reclaiming our narratives not just for ourselves, but for our families. Once everyone settled, I rose to address the crowd. "Thank you all for coming together today. This gathering is a celebration of our stories, blending our tastes, traditions, and family values." I scanned the faces illuminated by the golden sunlight, filling my heart with warmth, especially as I locked eyes with my daughter-in-law. The spark of acknowledgement ignited between us. After sharing our meal and laughter filling the air, it was time for dessert. My heart swelled with joy as I watched my daughter-in-law dive into the warm cobbler, savoring the first bite. There was an energy of acceptance surrounding us, and we reveled in this moment, evidence our connection had evolved into something more profound. Throughout the gathering, our families laughed together in a way that felt fresh and genuine. My son glanced at us, clearly impressed by our rapport. I could see that he carried hope, a belief that this new dynamic could lead to a stronger foundation for our family. As the sun dipped lower on the horizon, casting warm hues across the party, I felt triumphant in the changes we had ignited together. It felt incredible to witness our hard work yielding the bountiful fruits of family unity and appreciation. Underneath it all, I felt my mantra whispering in the back of my mind, "They can mute me at the table, never in my heart." Today marked a meaningful milestone. Not only was I reclaiming my dignity, but we were also crafting a legacy that honored respect, love, and understanding. This was a turning point. It had been forged from vulnerability and compromise, and I was grounded in the realization that the path ahead was filled with potential. Shall I proceed with Block 7? The gathering ebbed into twilight, the air now laced with a blend of grilled aromas and sweet desserts. Conversations grew more animated, punctuated by softer laughter, like gentle ripples in a still pond. I looked over at my daughter-in-law, her glow reflected in the hanging string lights as they twinkled overhead. The moment felt fragile yet powerful, a culmination of everything we had weathered together leading up to this very point. As we cleared the table, my son, embracing the newfound spirit of the gathering, suggested we play a game. "How about a round of 2 truths and a lie?" he proposed, and the idea was met with cheers. The game promised laughter and storytelling, perfect ingredients for continuing the evening's momentum. I felt the flutter of discomfort anew. Games like this often stir up hidden truths, but this was a chance to share ourselves in a light-hearted manner, so I settled my nerves and joined in. The rules were simple. Each participant would share 2 truths and 1 lie, and the others would have to guess which was which. I hoped we could keep the tone cheerful, building off the energy we had generated all day. As the game progressed, guests began offering hilarious anecdotes. I caught myself laughing along, enjoying the way everyone seamlessly took turns, weaving their tales together like a family quilt. But when it was my daughter-in-law's turn, I felt the air shift just slightly. "Okay, here are mine," she announced, a sly smile curling her lips. "I once appeared on television. I love hiking in the mountains, and I make the best chocolate cake in the world." The table erupted with guesses, and I held my breath, feeling the tension mounting. As everyone debated the veracity of her statements, I couldn't help but admire the sparkle in her eyes. Anyone watching might see a confident woman, yet I could still sense a timid undercurrent swirling beneath. "Wait, chocolate cake?" I shot my hand up, trying to capture attention as the others argued. "That sounds suspicious. Are you sure that's true?" She narrowed her gaze playfully. "Oh, so you think it's the lie? What if I told you I once made a cake so fantastic that a famous chef asked for the recipe?" "Okay, that one's got to be true," I said. "You've amazed me with your cooking before. Let's go with something else." The back and forth continued, but her eyes sparkled with exhilaration, fueled by the responsive energy surrounding her. As the laughter crescendoed, I noted my son's supportive gaze, encouragement passing between them without words spoken. When her truths were finally revealed, shouts of surprise filled the air, and the atmosphere brimmed with delight as she volunteered to make the chocolate cake again for the next family gathering. That was a promise I'd gladly welcome, one that would symbolize our ever-evolving partnership. Once the game concluded, however, the mood shifted subtly. Guests began to filter out, exchanging heartfelt goodbyes and gratitude. But I could sense the undercurrents. My daughter-in-law seemed distant, and a shadow clouded her expression for a brief moment. My heart quickened. I sensed this might be an important moment to address. I walked over to her, uncertainty dancing in my stomach as I asked softly, "Is everything okay?" For a moment, she hesitated, then her mask slipped, and vulnerability flickered in her eyes. Sometimes I wonder if I'm enough to fit into this family. I feel like I'm still the outsider, even after today." My heart sank, understanding coursing through me. This was the fear I too had lived for years. I reached out, gently touching her arm, an invitation to open up. My voice was firm. "You belong here. You've brought so much joy to our family, especially today. It's your heart, your spirit. Those are what matter." Her expression softened, and she nodded slowly, the vulnerability in her eyes reflecting the pure struggle of our shared journeys. That was the moment I knew I had to take a stand, to ensure this bond thrived, not just on the surface, but deeply rooted in sincere acceptance. "Remember my mantra," I continued, emboldened. "They can mute me at the table, never in my heart. We're in this together, and I will always stand by you." As the final guests departed, leaving behind whispers of camaraderie, I felt an undeniable shift in our relationship. Standing beside my daughter-in-law, I recognized that we had crossed a threshold. We were no longer just family by marriage, but allies in this complex, delightful dance of life. With the moonlight spilling softly over our patio, I felt triumph filling the cracks of doubt that once held me prisoner. We were no longer estranged figures caught in a web of resentment, but two women finding strength in each other's stories. Together, we would reclaim our narratives and forge new paths forward. Shall I proceed with Block 8?